Hi everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I'm 33 years old, and I've spent the last decade building a life I thought was solid. My wife, Sherry, has been at the center of it all, and I've always done my best to keep her happy. I'm not some rich guy with millions in the bank, but I've worked hard, long hours, stressful deadlines. All to make sure our bills were paid and Sherry had what she needed. I took pride in that. I liked being the guy who could provide, the one who made things work even when money got tight. Sherry, though she's different, she's always loved the finer things. Designer handbags that cost more than my monthly rent, vacations to places I'd never even heard of until she showed me pictures, dinners at restaurants where the bill made my stomach twist. I didn't mind too much, though. If she wanted it, I found a way to make it happen. That's what you do when you love someone, right? You give, even when it's tough. I didn't ask for much in return. A quiet night at home with her, maybe a thank you now and then. That was enough for me. But looking back, I should have paid more attention. There were signs, little cracks in the picture-perfect life I thought we had. Sherry and her friends, John and Ricky, were obsessed with showing off. Every trip they took had to be perfect for Instagram, sunsets in exotic places, cocktails with little umbrellas, outfits that screamed money. I'd come home wiped out from work, my shoulders aching from sitting at a desk all day, and she'd roll her eyes if I suggested saving instead of spending. "You're too serious," she'd say, laughing like it was a joke. I'd laugh too, brushing it off because I didn't want to fight. I loved her too much to see what was right in front of me. Love can make you stupid like that, blind to the things you don't want to admit. Then everything changed. It was late, maybe 10 at night, and I was driving home from a meeting that had dragged on forever. My eyes were heavy, but I kept going, thinking about how I'd surprise Sherry with takeout, maybe that type of place she liked. I didn't see the other car until it was too late. There was a loud screech, metal crunching, glass shattering, and then nothing, just black. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped every few seconds. My whole body felt like it had been run over by a truck. The doctor came in, a serious guy with glasses, and told me I'd been lucky. A broken arm, some cracked ribs, a concussion, bad, but not fatal. I'd need weeks to recover, he said. I nodded, still groggy, and reached for my phone. I figured Sherry would be freaking out, probably blowing up my inbox with worried texts, maybe even crying at my bedside when I woke up. But she wasn't there. My phone was on the little table next to me, and when I grabbed it, I saw just one notification, a voicemail. I hit play, expecting to hear her voice shaking, telling me she was on her way. Instead, it was light, casual, like she was leaving a message about grocery shopping. "Hey babe, hope you're feeling better. So, me, John, and Ricky already planned this Rome trip, and we're going ahead as scheduled. Don't worry about us, we're going to have so much fun, just rest, okay? Oh, and please don't call and disturb us." That was it. "No, I love you." "No, I'm scared," nothing. My chest tightened, and not just from the ribs. She didn't even ask if I was okay. I replayed it, thinking maybe I'd heard wrong, but no, it was clear as day. My wife, the woman I'd spent years bending over backwards for, was leaving me here, broken and alone, to go party in Italy. And she didn't want me to bother her about it. I sat there, staring at the cracked screen of my phone, the hospital room spinning a little. The beeping machines felt louder, like they were mocking me. I'd always told myself Sherry loved me in her own way, that her spending and her attitude didn't mean she didn't care. But this wasn't love. This was something else, something cold and selfish. I thought about all the times I'd ignored the red flags. The way she'd smirk when I said we couldn't afford something, the way John and Ricky would giggle about how responsible I was, like it was a bad thing. I let it slide because I didn't want to lose her. But now, lying here with a busted body and a voicemail that might as well have been a slap in the face, I realized I'd been fooling myself. She didn't care about me, not the way I cared about her, and that hurt more than the accident ever could. The nurse came in, asking if I needed anything, but I just shook my head. I didn't trust my voice yet. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of our marriage, every sacrifice I'd made. The late nights at work so she could have that new purse, the weekends I'd spend alone because she was off with her friends, the way I'd smile and say it's fine when she brushed me off. I'd given her everything, and this was what I got in return, a cheery little message telling me not to ruin her fun. My hands clenched into fists, the four tugging at my skin. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I was angry. For the first time in years, I felt like I could see her for who she really was. And I wasn't sure I liked what I saw. The accident had broken my body, but Sherry? She'd broken something else entirely, and I wasn't sure I could forgive her for it. The hospital room was dim when I woke up, the only light coming from the faint glow of the machines next to me. My body hurt everywhere, my arm in a cast, my ribs screaming every time I took a breath, my head pounding like someone was hitting it with a hammer. I'd been driving home the night before, thinking about surprising Sherry with dinner, maybe some flowers to make her smile. It was a long day, one of those meetings where the boss wouldn't stop talking, and all I wanted was to see her face light up. Then it happened, tires screeching, a flash of headlights, the world flipping upside down. I don't remember much after that, just the sound of metal twisting, and then darkness swallowing me whole. When my eyes opened again, I was here, staring at a white ceiling, trying to piece it all together. The doctor had come by earlier, telling me I'd dodged a bullet. Could have been worse, he said, like that was supposed to make me feel better. Weeks of recovery, he told me, bed rest, pain meds, the works. I nodded, still half out of it, and reached for my phone. I expected to see a dozen missed calls from Sherry, texts begging me to answer, maybe even a voice cracking with tears. She'd be worried sick, right? I mean, I'd almost died. My hands shook a little as I unlocked the screen, the cracked glass catching the light. One notification, just one. A voicemail, time-stamped a few hours ago. I hit play, holding the phone to my ear, ready to hear her panic, her love, something to make this ache in my chest feel less heavy. "Hey babe, hope you're feeling better." She started, her voice bright, like she was ordering coffee. "So, me, John, and Ricky already planned this Rome trip, and we're going ahead as scheduled. Don't worry about us, we're going to have so much fun. Just rest, okay? Oh, and please don't call and disturb us." The message ended with a little laugh, like she just told me a funny story. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over the play button. Did I hear that right? I played it again, slower this time, listening to every word. Nope, no mistake, my wife was ditching me. Me, lying here broken in a hospital bed, to go party in Rome with her friends. And she didn't want me to bother her. My stomach twisted, and it wasn't from the pain meds. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, even after the message ended, like maybe there'd be a hidden part where she'd say she was kidding. But there wasn't, just silence, then the beep of the voicemail menu. I dropped the phone onto the blanket, my good hand curling into a fist. She hadn't even come to see me. I'd been out cold for hours, hooked up to tubes, and she didn't even check if I was alive before hopping on a plane. "No, I love you." "No, I'm scared." Not even a "call me when you wake up." "Just don't disturb us." Like I was some annoying kid, she didn't want bugging her vacation. I leaned back against the pillow, my breath coming fast despite the pain in my ribs. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. I'd spent years making sure she had everything. Those fancy bags, those trips, the life she wanted. And this was what I got, a pat on the head, and a "see you later." I tried to picture her, standing in some airport with John and Ricky, all giggles and suitcases, not a care in the world. Did she even ask about me? Did she call the hospital, or was that too much effort? My mind spun, replaying the last few weeks. She'd been so excited about Rome, going on about the food, the shopping, the pictures they'd take. I'd smiled, nodded, even helped her pack, all while working overtime to cover the cost. I didn't complain, because that's who I am. I'd take care of things. I'd take care of her. But now, lying here, I felt like an idiot. She didn't care if I was okay. She didn't care that I'd almost died. All she cared about was her fun, her friends, her stupid trip. The anger started low, a rumble in my chest, then spread until my whole body felt hot. I wanted to yell, to throw something, but I couldn't even sit up without wincing. The nurse came in, a kind-looking woman with gray hair, asking if I needed water or more meds. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. She gave me a small smile and left, the door clicking shut behind her. Alone again, I stared at the ceiling, the voicemail echoing in my head. "Don't disturb us." Those words cut deeper than the crash ever could. I thought about calling her, demanding to know what the hell she was thinking, but what would that do? She'd probably laugh it off, tell me I was overreacting. Or worse, she'd ignore me completely. My fingers tightened around the blanket. I'd given her everything. My time, my money, my heart. And she'd left me here like I was nothing. Something snapped inside me, sharp and final. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being her doormat. She'd made her choice. Now it was my turn. The hospital ceiling was all I could stare at for hours. Those ugly white tiles with little black specks that made my eyes blur if I looked too long. My body still ached. My arm in its stiff cast. My ribs throbbing every time I shifted. My head heavy from the concussion. The pain meds dulled it a little, but not enough to stop me from feeling everything else. That voicemail from Sophia kept playing in my head over and over like a song I couldn't turn off. "Hey babe, hope you're feeling better. We're going ahead as scheduled. Please don't call and disturb us." Her voice so light and carefree, like she was telling me she'd be late for dinner, not leaving me alone in a hospital bed after I'd nearly died. I'd listened to it maybe 10 times already, each replay making my chest tighter, my hands clench harder. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was mad, madder than I'd ever been in my whole life. And it wasn't the kind of mad that fades after a few minutes. This was deep, burning, the kind that makes you want to do something big. I thought about everything I'd done for her. I'm 32, not old, but I've worked my ass off to give us a good life. Late nights at the office, weekends spent catching up on emails. Also, Sophia could have her designer bags and fancy dinners. I paid for everything. Our rent, her clothes, those trips with John and Ricky that I never got invited to. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. She'd smile, kiss my cheek, and I'd feel like it was worth it. But now I saw it clear as day. She didn't care about me, not really. I'd been in a car wreck, totaled my truck, ended up here with tubes in my arm. And she couldn't even wait to see if I'd wake up before jetting off to Rome. She didn't call the hospital, didn't text to check in. Just that one stupid message telling me to leave her alone. I'd given her my whole world, and I didn't even matter to her. That hit me harder than the crash ever could. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I'd paid for that Rome trip, every flight, every hotel room, every glass of wine she'd sip while laughing with her friends, my money, my sweat, my long hours. And she couldn't even be bothered to care if I lived or died. I pictured her there now, probably posting selfies on Instagram, captioning them with something dumb like living my best life, while I lay here stuck in this bed alone. Fine, I thought. If she wanted to leave me behind like I was nothing, then I'd leave her behind too. She didn't get to treat me like this and keep everything I'd given her. Not anymore. My mind started racing, and before I knew it, I was reaching for my laptop. It was on the table next to me, a little scratched from the wreck, but still working. I propped it on my lap, wincing as my ribs complained, and logged into our bank accounts. We had joint accounts, everything tied together because I trusted her. Big mistake. This was deep, burning, the kind that makes you want to do something big. I thought about everything I'd done for her. I'm 33, not old, but I've worked my ass off to give us a good life. Late nights at the office, weekends spent catching up on emails. Also, Sophia could have her designer bags and fancy dinners. I paid for everything. Our rent, her clothes, those trips with John and Ricky that I never got invited to. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. She'd smile, kiss my cheek, and I'd feel like it was worth it. But now I saw it clear as day. She didn't care about me, not really. I'd been in a car wreck, totaled my truck, ended up here with tubes in my arm. And she couldn't even wait to see if I'd wake up before jetting off to Rome. She didn't call the hospital, didn't text to check in. Just that one stupid message telling me to leave her alone. I'd given her my whole world, and I didn't even matter to her. That hit me harder than the crash ever could. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I'd paid for that Rome trip, every flight, every hotel room, every glass of wine she'd sip while laughing with her friends, my money, my sweat, my long hours. And she couldn't even be bothered to care if I lived or died. I pictured her there now, probably posting selfies on Instagram, captioning them with something dumb like living my best life, while I lay here stuck in this bed alone. Fine, I thought. If she wanted to leave me behind like I was nothing, then I'd leave her behind too. She didn't get to treat me like this and keep everything I'd given her. Not anymore. My mind started racing, and before I knew it, I was reaching for my laptop. It was on the table next to me, a little scratched from the wreck, but still working. I propped it on my lap, wincing as my ribs complained, and logged into our bank accounts. We had joint accounts, everything tied together because I trusted her. Big mistake. My fingers moved fast, typing passwords, pulling up balances. I saw the charges already hitting from Rome, coffee shops, boutiques, a big one from some fancy restaurant. My money spent without a second thought. I gritted my teeth and got to work. First, I blocked all the ATM cards linked to her name. Click done. No more cash for her. Then I locked every bank account she had access to, our checking, our savings, the emergency fund I'd built up over years. Click, click, click. She wasn't getting a dime. Finally, I went into the credit cards and canceled all international transaction privileges. Anything she tried to swipe in Italy would bounce, declined, useless. It took maybe 10 minutes, and when I was done, I leaned back, breathing hard. Sherry and her friends were stranded now. No money. No way to pay for anything. Good luck with your fun. I thought, a bitter taste in my mouth. I closed the laptop and set it aside, my heart pounding, but not from pain this time. It was something else, satisfaction, maybe, or power. For once, I wasn't the guy just taking it. I'd hit back. I could imagine her face when her card got declined. That smug little smile fading as John and Ricky panicked next to her. They'd probably call me soon, begging, yelling, whatever. I didn't care. I grabbed my phone, still sitting there with that damn voicemail, and turned it to silent. No more beeps, no more interruptions. The room was quiet now, just the hum of the machines and my own breathing. I closed my eyes, letting the anger settle into something solid, something I could hold on to. Sherry thought she could walk all over me, leave me here like trash, and still keep living her perfect little life on my dime. She was wrong. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time, I felt like I could rest. So I did. I let sleep take me. Knowing she'd figure out soon enough that her world had just flipped upside down. The hospital room was dark when my phone started buzzing. The screen lighting up the blanket where I tossed it. I turned it to silent before I fell asleep, but the vibration still woke me up. My eyes were gritty, my body stiff from lying in the same position too long. And every move made my ribs ache like someone was jabbing me with a stick. I glanced at the clock on the wall, 3:45 a.m. Who the hell was calling me at this hour? I didn't need to guess too hard. I reached for the phone, wincing as my cast brushed the bed rail, and saw Sherry's name flashing. Missed call, then another buzz, another one. By the time I unlocked it, there were 3 missed calls, all from her, and a handful of texts piling up. I rubbed my face with my good hand. The fog of sleep clearing as I realized what was happening. It had been a day since I locked her out of our accounts, blocked her cards, cut her off. They must have landed in Rome by now, tried to spend my money, and figured out it wasn't working. I opened the messages, leaning back against the pillow, the dim light from the screen, making my head throb a little. The first one was simple, casual, like she didn't think it was a big deal yet. "Babe, there's something wrong with my card. It's declining everywhere. Can you check?" Sent a few hours ago, probably when they got to the hotel or some shop. The next one, an hour later. "Are you awake? This is serious." Then John's number popped up. "Hey, I think our cards aren't working. We can't check in at the hotel. Call Sherry," and Ricky, always the dramatic one. "WTF is going on? We're stuck." I scrolled through them, my lips twitching into a smirk. I could picture it. Sherry is standing there with her fancy suitcase, swiping her card over and over, that annoyed little frown she gets when things don't go her way. John probably whining. Ricky cursing loud enough for everyone to hear. They'd planned this big, glamorous trip, and now they were stuck, probably sweating in some airport lobby, or arguing with a hotel clerk who didn't care. By morning, the messages had piled up, dozens of them, each one more frantic than the last. My phone buzzed again as I held it, another call from Sherry. I let it go to voicemail, watching the screen until it stopped. A minute later, the little icon popped up, new message. I didn't play it yet. I just sat there, letting the quiet of the room settle around me. The steady beep of the heart monitor, keeping time with my thoughts. I wasn't surprised they were freaking out. I'd cut them off cold. No cash, no credit, nothing. All that money I'd worked for, the overtime I'd put in, the nights I'd come home too tired to eat. They'd been spending it like it grew on trees. And now they had nothing. I'd made sure of that. Part of me wanted to laugh, imagining them scrambling, but another part just felt heavy. This was my wife, the woman I'd promised to love forever, and here I was, smirking at her panic. What did that say about us? I scrolled back through the texts, reading them again. Sherry's tone had shifted fast. The first few were annoyed, like she thought I'd just forgotten to pay a bill or something. "Babe, fix this," she wrote at 5 a.m. Then, an hour later, "This isn't funny. We're stuck at the airport." John chimed in again. "Do you know how humiliating this is? We can't even buy food." Ricky's next one was all caps. "You need to answer US now." I could hear their voices in my head, the way they'd snap at waiters or complain about slow service. They weren't used to this. Being told no, having to figure things out. Sherry especially. She'd always had me to fall back on, me to fix it, me to make it right. Not this time. I'd lay in here in this bed, bruised and broken, listening to her tell me not to disturb her precious trip. Well, now she'd see what it felt like to be on her own. By noon, the desperation was clear. Sherry's latest text was a wall of words. "Please, I don't know what's happening. The hotel won't let us in. We can't pay for anything. Why aren't you answering?" Another voicemail popped up, and this time I hit play, holding the phone to my ear. Her voice was shrill, cracking at the edges. "Babe, this is insane. My card's not working. Claire is freaking out. Ricky's yelling at everyone. What's going on? Call me please." I set the phone down. My smirk fading into something colder. She sounded scared. Yeah, but there was still no. "I'm sorry." "No, are you okay?" "Nothing about me. Just her mess, her problem." I leaned my head back, closing my eyes. The anger from yesterday was still there, simmering, but now it had an edge, satisfaction. They were feeling it now, the weight of what she'd done. I'd given her everything, and she'd left me here like I didn't matter. Let her figure out how to survive without me for once. I didn't answer. Not the calls, not the texts, not the voicemails piling up. The nurse came in, asking if I was okay, and I nodded, keeping my face blank. She adjusted something on the floor and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. My phone buzzed again, Sherry begging now. Please, just tell me what's wrong. I ignored it. They were stuck. Yeah, but they'd live. They'd find a way to scrape by, maybe borrow money, or call someone else to bail them out. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't running to fix her problems. I wasn't the guy she could count on to make it all better. She'd made her choice when she left me here, and now she'd deal with mine. I set the phone face down, the buzzing muffled against the blanket, and stared out the window. The sun was up bright and sharp. It felt like a new day, one where I wasn't her doormat anymore. The hospital room felt colder that afternoon, the air heavy with the smell of antiseptic and the hum of machines keeping me company. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the early hours, Sherry's name lighting up the screen over and over, her panic growing with every unanswered call. I'd left it face down on the blanket, the vibrations a dull drone against my leg, but I couldn't ignore it forever. My ribs ached as I shifted, reaching for it with my good hand, the cast on the other making everything clumsy. The screen was a mess of notifications, missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from her and her friends, John and Ricky. I'd locked them out of every account, blocked every card, and now they were feeling the fallout in Rome. No money, no hotel, no fancy dinners, just the three of them, stranded and scrambling. I scrolled through the latest texts, my jaw tight. Sherry's words had gone from annoyed to desperate overnight, and now they were straight up furious. Are you serious right now? How could you do this to me? She'd written an hour ago, all caps, like she was screaming through the phone. John's was next. I can't believe you're leaving us stranded in Italy. Fix this now. Then Ricky, always the loudest. We had to sleep in the airport last night. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I read them slow, letting each one sink in. Sleeping in the airport? No hotel? Good. I pictured them huddled on those hard benches. Sherry clutching her suitcase. John whining about her back, Ricky glaring at anyone who walked by. They'd gone from sipping wine in Italy to crashing in a terminal, and I didn't feel a shred of guilt. They deserved it. Sherry especially. She'd left me here, broken and alone, with nothing but a voicemail telling me not to bother her. Now she was mad because I'd flipped the script. Tough luck. The phone rang again. Her number, the 72nd call since last night. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to let it ring, keep her hanging, but another part was curious. What would she say now? How loud would she yell? I had accept and put it to my ear, leaning back against the pillow, my voice calm as I answered. Hello. There was a beat of silence. Then her voice exploded through the line, sharp and furious. How could you do this to me? She shouted, so loud I had to pull the phone away for a second. I didn't flinch. I just waited, letting her get it out. She kept going, her words tumbling over each other. Do you know what we've been through? My cards declined everywhere. We can't pay for the hotel. We're stuck sleeping in the damn airport. Why would you do this? I took a slow breath, keeping my tone smooth, almost lazy. Oh, so now I'm worth talking to. I said, cutting her off. Because a few days ago, I was just a disturbance to your little vacation. She went quiet, the kind of silence that feels loud. I could hear her breathing, fast and shaky, like she hadn't expected me to push back. I kept going, my voice steady but cold. You left me in a hospital bed, alone, so you could party in Rome. And now you want me to fix your problems. She stammered, her anger cracking. But, I wasn't thinking. I thought you'd be fine. I laughed, short and bitter, cutting her off again. Fine? I almost died, Sherry. Crashed my truck, broke my arm, cracked my ribs, and you didn't even check if I was alive before you took off. You thought I'd be fine. Well, I thought you'd care." Guess we were both wrong. She didn't say anything, just a little gasp, like she was scrambling for words. I didn't give her the chance. "You told me not to disturb you," I said, my voice hardened out. "So figure out your own way home." And I hung up, dropping the phone onto the bed like it was nothing. The room was quiet again, just the beep of the monitor and my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the call. She'd sounded so shocked, like she couldn't believe I'd actually done it. Cut her off, left her to fend for herself. What did she expect? That I'd just lie here, hurting, while she spent my money and laughed with her friends? That I'd pick up the phone and save her the second she snapped her fingers? Not this time. I'd spent years being the guy who fixed everything, who paid for everything, who let her walk all over me because I loved her. But love's supposed to go both ways, and she'd show me hers was a lie. That voicemail, her cheery little "don't call and disturb us." It was still burned in my head, every word a knife. She didn't care then, so why should I care now? I thought about what she'd said. I wasn't thinking. Yeah, that was the problem. She never thought about me, not really. I was just the bank, the safety net, the guy who made her life easy. And John and Ricky, they were no better, leeching off her, off me, like it was their right. Now they were stuck, and I could almost see the chaos. Sherry yelling at some poor clerk, John crying, Ricky stomping around like a kid, throwing a tantrum. They weren't queens anymore, ruling their little Instagram world. They were just three women with no money and no plan, and I'd made that happen. My chest felt lighter, like I'd let go of something heavy. I didn't pick up the phone again when it buzzed, didn't read the next flood of texts. I was done talking, they'd figure it out, or they wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in days, I closed my eyes and felt a real calm settle in. She'd fallen, and I wasn't catching her this time. The hospital room was starting to feel like a cage, the white walls and steady beeps wearing on me as the days dragged on. My body still hurt, my arms stiff in its cast, my ribs sore every time I breathed too deep, but the pain wasn't what kept me up now. It was Sherry. Her calls and texts hadn't stopped since I'd hung up on her yesterday. Each one more desperate than the last. I'd stopped answering, stopped even reading most of them, but they kept coming, buzzing my phone like an angry wasp I couldn't swat away. I'd locked her out of our accounts, blocked her cards, left her stranded in Rome with John and Ricky, and now they were living the consequences. No more fancy hotels or wine-soaked dinners, just the three of them, scrambling to survive on nothing. I'd done that. Me. And every time my phone lit up with her name, I felt a little spark of something, not guilt, not anymore, but something close to victory. I finally picked up the phone that afternoon, my good hands sore from gripping it too tight. The screen was full, missed calls, voicemails, a flood of text that had shifted from anger to pure panic. Sherry's latest one was a mess. "Babe, please. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking." Another, an hour later, "We're out of money. We're sleeping in a hostel full of bed bugs." Then Ricky, her usual charm. "This is all your fault." John wasn't far behind. "You are an evil, evil man." I read them slow, letting the words sink in, picturing it all. A hostel? Bed bugs. I could see Sherry's face, that perfect makeup smudged, her hair a mess, freaking out over itchy bites while John and Ricky bickered beside her. They'd gone from posting selfies in Rome to scratching in some dingy room, and I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. She'd left me here, broken in a hospital bed, with a cheery little, "Don't disturb us" voicemail. This was what she got. I leaned back against the pillow, my ribs complaining as I shifted. The anger from before was still there, but it was quieter now, mixed with something else, satisfaction, maybe, or just relief. I'd spent years giving her everything. Every paycheck, every late night at work, every time I said yes, when I wanted to say no. It was all for her, that Rome trip. I'd paid for it, every cent, working extra hours, so she could have her fun with her friends, and how'd she thank me? By taking off while I was unconscious, not even checking if I'd wake up, I replayed that voicemail in my head for the 100th time. Hope you're feeling better. We're going to have so much fun, and my jaw tightened. She didn't care then, so why should I care now? She'd wanted her fantasy, and I'd let her have it, until I didn't. Now it was a nightmare, and I pulled the plug. I thought about what she'd said on the phone yesterday, her voice cracking when I called her out. I wasn't thinking. I thought you'd be fine. Fine. I'd totaled my truck, spent hours out cold, woken up to tubes, and a doctor telling me I was lucky to be alive. And she thought I'd be fine. She didn't even ask. Didn't call the hospital, didn't text, didn't care, just packed her bags and left. John and Ricky probably egged her on, giggling about how I'd get over it, while they planned their big adventure. They'd always treated me like the boring husband, the guy who paid the bills, but didn't matter. Well, they were wrong. I mattered now, didn't I?